Hey there, everyone. Hope you're having a good day. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Brian Sharp. I'm a mental health counselor and a medium as well. Um, so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what I do, and just so you have a better idea before maybe you or a friend are thinking of scheduling an appointment. Um, but as a mental health counselor, I work with people in the states of Texas, Connecticut, and Florida, as well as the United Kingdom. So I hold licensure in the states of Connecticut, Florida, and Texas to practice as a counselor, and I hold full accreditation with the British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy. I also hold membership with the BABCP, which is a UK organization for cognitive behavioral therapy. So I kind of got into that. I got my master's degree in 2010 from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and I've worked in a lot of different environments. I've worked in community mental health, so with some very challenging problems, things including complex and severe mental illness. Also worked with homelessness quite a bit, with substance use. I've worked in private practice as well. So I've done some work in private practice. That's what I do now, actually. And I've worked a lot in that environment with things like depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and then also I do couples therapy as well. So I've actually completed a level 2 training in the Gottman method. You may have heard of that. So it's an evidence-based approach to working with couples. And the results of the research on the Gottman method are pretty compelling. I encourage you, check out my website at briansharpcounseling.com, and you can read more about all of that. In addition to that, I am also a licensed professional counselor supervisor for the state of Texas. So I've undergone additional training to be able to supervise other counselors in training. But now kind of on to the other piece. So I do all of my work virtually, and I also work as a medium, and a lot of people are really curious about that and kind of what that is. And medium is someone who is able to perceive messages and signs and symbols from people who have passed on from the physical realm, from the earth realm. If you want to call that, they've moved on to heaven, they've moved into the afterlife, they've moved into the spirit world. That's what I call it. But I just kind of fell into that, and there's actually a really interesting personal story behind that. I actually, when I was about 4 years old, I remember I awoke one night. My brother and I had a bunk bed, and I awoke one night in the middle of the night, and I saw the apparition of a man at the end of my bed, what some people might call a ghost. And I remember at the time it scared the living hell out of me. I was like, what is this? I had a couple experiences since that time, but when I lost my great-grandmother at the age of 21, it was really challenging for me. And I remember as a child, she always used to tell me, I want to live long enough to see you turn 21. And she died when I was 21 years of age. So at the time, I found that the usual religious framework that I grew up with, it wasn't giving me quite the comfort that I needed at the time. And so I started to have readings with mediums, and a couple of them were okay. A couple of them were like I didn't really feel like they connected with her, and then there were a couple others that I remember I walked away and I thought, wow, they really described her almost to a T. And it's so interesting because I ended up undergoing a training to develop my own mediumistic abilities, and which were very incompatible with the religious teachings that I grew up with. I tell people I was raised Pentecostal, so I joke sometimes. I say, we learned more about the devil and hell than we did about anything else. And to me, it's very comforting to know that my loved ones who have passed into the spirit world, they're still able to communicate with me. They're still able to make contact with me. They're still a comfort to me, just not in the same way that they were on the earth plane. And so it's really interesting. My husband is actually very skeptical of. I work as a counselor a lot with the LGBT community as well, but my husband is very skeptical of the whole concept of mediums. And I remember one of the first times that we met, he said, okay, he said, if you're really a medium, he wanted to test me. He said, then tell me something about somebody that I've lost. And we really hadn't known each other very long at that point in time. It was one of the first few times that we had met up. And I started to describe his cousin to him, who died many years before. I remember I described, a number of details that he was giving me, that his cousin was giving me, and my husband's jaw was kind of on the floor. He said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "It wasn't me. It didn't have anything to do with me. Your cousin provided me with those details." So I think of my work as a medium as really being more of an interpreter, like a language interpreter. I'm listening to one language, and spirit's language tends to be, they don't speak in complete sentences typically like we do. So they typically speak in words, images, with symbols, feelings, and sometimes it comes very rapidly. It comes very fast. So it's very common for me as a medium sometimes to begin to speak more rapidly as I'm connecting with spirit, because they're giving me so much information kind of all at once. But that's how I see my work as a medium. I'm more of a language interpreter than I am anything else. Spirit is the one providing me with the message that hopefully makes sense to the sitter, to the client. Now I always tell new clients, I'm like, I do both types of work. I work as a mental health counselor. I work as a medium. I for legal and ethical reasons, I can't combine those two. So I always tell people, if you've had a mediumship reading with me before, if you've had a counseling with me before, I can't provide the other service to you. With that said, I would also like to just let you know. I mean, there's some scientific research on mediumship that actually shows that there's some evidence that it might even be more effective in some ways than traditional grief therapy. Now, I would never suggest that somebody not see a grief therapist if they're dealing with something like that. But there is some evidence that suggests that mediumship may be a very useful adjunct to traditional grief therapy. They find that people tend to recover from their grief a lot more quickly. They tend to find that people find that they feel like they have more closure about their loved one passing. And it's really funny because, I always tell people that as a medium, I have no control over what spirit comes through or how they come through. All I'm doing is listening to the message and trying to repackage it in a way that'll make sense to my client. But I've had people come through. I've had pets come through. I remember one of the funniest readings I had one time was a client of mine had lost a cat that they had had for years, and I described the color of this cat, but I said it looks kind of strange to me. It looks like it's way off in the distance and it's really tiny. I said it almost looks like a little bitty mouse, and they kind of laughed because they said that makes so much sense because my cat would always hide in this little corner way off in the end of our living room, to where you could just barely see it. But I always tell clients, or prospective clients, I always tell clients that both services, mediumship and counseling, I think it's very common for people to have some initial hesitation. And I always tell people, it's usually not the scary, terrible experience that we convince ourselves it is. So with mediumship, it's literally like I'm talking to you now. With counseling, it's a lot like that too. People they tend to think when they come to counseling, if they've never been to counseling before, or maybe they've had a bad experience with a counselor in the past, like they tend to think that I'm going to make them spill out their deep, dark secrets, and it's going to feel so uncomfortable, and oh my gosh, they just won't be able to deal with it. So they put off going to counseling, they put off mediumship, and when they finally do it, they're like, wow, this was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. But please feel free to check out my website at www.briansharpcounseling.com. You can also find a biography of me at mindfulvisioncounseling.com. I work with that company as a contractor. And then you can also check me out on Facebook. Just do a search for Brian Sharp Counseling. I'd certainly invite you to follow me there. I post there pretty regularly. Please feel free to reach out to me with any of your questions or concerns. You can reach me at Brian, that's BRIAN, at mindfulvisioncounseling.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about either counseling or about mediumship. But anyway, it's been a pleasure spending this time with you today, and I hope to be able to make more of these videos in the near future. Hopefully we'll get to talk with one another pretty soon. Take care.